Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today we have Haikeem Stokes on our channel today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much, Queen. I appreciate this opportunity. And while I'm on here, I like to say my heart goes out to everybody that's dealing with this unfortunate season that we're going through at the time. But I definitely believe that if we stay prayed up
Mhm.
and if we do what we're supposed to do, everything will work out fine. You know, you just got to leave it in the Creator's hands. But definitely my heart goes out to those who have family members and friends that were lost. But we just gotta buckle down and do what we gotta do to get through this season.
Okay. Tell us a little about Hakeem.
Well, I don't know. A lot of folks say I'm complex, but I'm just a regular guy that tries to do as much as possible. You know, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a poet. I do what I feel that's inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't stick to one thing. If I want to do uh, drama, I do drama. If I want to do poetry, I do poetry. If I want to do romance, I do that. If I want to do something that's kind of quote unquote hood, I'll do hood. You know, hey, one day I'm gonna probably do a children's book. One day I'm gonna probably do some sci-fi. So I just do whatever I feel is inside of me to do, and I believe that's it's a challenge. I believe that's more challenging than just to stay quote unquote. I guess some people say stay in your lane, and that's great, but it's like what's the fun in that?
Mm-hmm.
What's the challenge in that? You know, you could do one thing great, but how about challenging yourself to do many things great? You know, that's the possibilities with me. I just believe that anything is possible. You know, you just have to do, you know, your due diligence to
Yes.
become good at it. You
Mm-hmm.
definitely have to become good at it. You can't just do like a multiplicity of things and you're doing horribly at it. You know, practice makes perfect. So you just keep practicing and practicing, and hopefully um, you'll become great at it. So that's what I'm trying to do. I always challenge myself to to do better, to be greater than the last project that I did. So it's just everything is a work in progress with me. So I'm just a regular guy that tries to do great things, I guess you could say.
Okay. What's your genre?
Like I said, I don't stick to one particular drama. Um, I've been pegged as Mr. Romance, so I kind of go with that as a tongue-in-cheek thing. But I really like doing a multiplicity of things. I like doing various genres. Like my two latest books, um, I deal with nonfiction projects rather than just staying in the fiction realm. I dove into nonfiction, and they were topics that are very hard. You know, one is the Purple Orchard syndrome, where I interviewed 12 men between the ages of 21 and 71 on the experience of growing up without a father in the household, and it tells of their trials, tribulations, and triumphs. And a book that's kind of like in the retort, Littered Fields. I interviewed several women on their experience with their father as it relates to the men that they chose in their lives. So that's kind of like looking at yourself in the mirror as a woman saying, well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is why I deal with lousy men because maybe my father was lousy at some point or at many points in my life, or this is why I deal with great men because my father was a great man, and he that's the kind of uh, what he gave me in my life. So a lot of folks, fiction, nonfiction is truth, and a lot of folks, including myself. I mean, everybody's human, so sometimes you don't like to look in the mirror and face your truth. So, but I feel as though, I mean, why uh, fill your palate with all these lies. You just read
Yeah.
fiction. You just fiction. Sometimes you have to go through and get a little nonfiction to kind of like clean your palate, to cleanse your palate.
Okay. Now let's talk about some of your books. You can show us your books and talk about each one of them that you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, the initial my initial work was I Need You Too.
Mm-hmm.
So I Need You Too is the story of a young man who realizes the virtues of monogamy. And if you read the synopsis on the back, if you go to Amazon.com, you can purchase an e copy, or you can go to my website, which I'll give you later. But uh, everyone, and it's the corny adage of don't judge a book by its cover, because it's actually the story of a young man that realizes the virtues of monogamy. So it's a story of a young man who may be dealing with a woman or two or five or whatever, but he's actually trying to figure out which woman he wants to be with for the rest of his life. And at 21, 22, which is, the average age, he's early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're all early 20s. You don't know who you want to be with for the rest of your life. You say you do, but at 22, 24, you don't know who you want to be with for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to figure out, he's dealing with a couple of women, and this woman has this and that woman has that, and you wish you can mesh them all into one person, but you can't. So you kind of figure out, okay, that 80-20 thing, like, can I deal with that, and can I deal without that, or
Mm-hmm.
what have you. So it's really that challenge, because he really does just want to be with one woman. So he's just facing a lot right now and working his way through all of that. So then I also have the next book that I went to was a book of poetry, and that would be Reality Life Conscious Struggle.
Okay.
And this book of poetry explores 4 stages of our existence. So that's why it's Reality Life Conscious Struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And struggle is last because, in my opinion, struggle is ongoing. Struggle is what we're going through, or what we'll go through for eternity, for as long as you're living. That's the struggle. You know, um, in the beginning, you're learning how to just, as an infant or a baby, you're learning how to hold your head up by yourself. You're learning how to, roll over, and you're learning how to crawl, and you're learning how to eventually walk. All that's a struggle. It just seems like natural progression, but it's a struggle. And then, as in your latter years, if you are able to get to it, you kind of revert back to a child again, and that's a struggle as well.
Mm-hmm.
Going from being a independent adult and doing things on your own, and things of that nature. Now you're almost like a child again.
Yeah.
So all that's a struggle, and in between that, it's a constant struggle. So the next book I penned was another novel, at 12 after, and it tells the story of 3 young men who grew up as best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, at the age of 12, they had a tumultuous experience that threw their life into peril. And it tells of how that experience, or those set of experience, because it was 3 different, each man had a separate experience
Mm-hmm.
that just coincidentally happened at the age of 12. So it just tells of how their friendship fared in light of their experience, and things that may have made it stronger, and things that may have weakened it. And it just tells, because I wrote that book because I thought there wasn't enough books that I've read that was about friendship, true friendship,
Yeah.
or even male bonding
Mm-hmm.
beyond uh negativity. These were 3 uh young men that grew up in, I guess, what you could say considered a hood, and it just tells of their past. Because one guy was married with children, and he was leading a picket fence life, and it was a second individual that was a consummate bachelor, So he didn't have any children. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have a girlfriend. Past one or two dates, and that was how he wanted his life. And the third gentleman was quote unquote the baby father. So he had a few baby mothers,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a few. Therefore, he had a few children.
Mm-hmm.
And pardon me, it tells of all how their separate paths
Mm-hmm.
led them. Well, how their separate paths went, and then their united front as friendship, and how it actually, uh, affected their friendship. Different things that they were doing that brothers would, you check each other on, or things would happen, and it would just kind of uh, trickle down into your friendship, because it's like you can't do one thing and it just stay in the background, because whatever happens in the dark usually comes to the light. So
Mm-hmm.
their friendship paid the cost for it, and it just tells of that story. But it's a very good story of friendship. And this, again, I went to another book of poetry, and this is Elixir. And this is very hot, steamy, grown folks poetry
Okay.
that you want to, that you want to, sit down. You might want to sit down with a nice glass of wine, and a little candle burn, a little incense or what have you, and be wrapped in some silk sheets and just entertain yourself with. So,
Okay.
and so then from there, I did I believe I did my first fiction, my first book of nonfiction. I apologize. And this was the Purple Orchard Syndrome that I spoke about earlier. Whereas though, again, I interviewed 12 men between the ages of 21 and 71 on their experience of growing up without a father in the household. Tells of their trials, tribulations, and triumphs. And also, I want to mention all the work that you see, all of the artwork that you see is done by myself.
Oh.
And so I'm like I said, I'm also an artist. So all the artwork you see is done by myself. All the models that you saw, they were models that I actually handpicked, and the pictures were taken. So everything is homegrown. Asafale books, everybody reads it as ossophilia, or all types of different interpretations. But the name of the publishing company is Asafale Books. Asafale Books, and so I went from that to concepts of intimacy. And concepts of intimacy uh, is basically the story of it traces a relationship from courtship to nuptials. And I did this book of poetry because a lot of people, not just men, not just women, not just late teens, early 20s folks, but just people. Unfortunately, a lot of women don't know what it is to be courted, and a lot of men don't know what it is to court a young woman, or a woman, period. You know, so that is kind of like a short course on on a way, not the way, but on a way to court someone. You just don't jump from, hey, what up? Let me buy you a drink. Hey, we in a relationship.
Sure.
Like, there's so many steps in between, especially if you want to know that person, if you want to get to know that person.
Mhm.
If you're just in it, both parties are in it just for wham bam, thank you ma'am experience. Okay, whatever. But if you're really trying to get to know that person, then you got to do that. Like, a lot of people, I see a lot of folks arguing. I see a lot of folks always in turmoil and quarrel, and it's because you didn't get to know that person before
Mhm.
you jumped into a marriage, or you didn't know that person before you had a baby with them, or you didn't know that person before you moved in with them. You know, um, it's just a lot of. It would take a lot of the headache out of it if you just actually got to know one another. You got to know their dislikes and likes. Now, nothing's perfect. It's not going to make for a perfect relationship or a marriage after that. But I believe it would help a lot if you at least did that. Just got to know each other a lot, spend some time with one another, not just
Mm-hmm.
jump in the sack, go on some dates, do some, be friends first. Get to know their likes, dislikes, things that, make them tick. Um, and you also got to know when to say when. You can't just ask a billion questions. And if you see that person getting irritated or agitated, you got to, okay, maybe they're not for that today. Or maybe I'm asking some sensitive questions that they don't want to answer now, but they may answer in the short future. So you gotta, and that's when you get, that's in getting to know someone. It's like if somebody kind of goes into a shell and then you keep pushing and keep pushing, then they lash out and now y'all
Yeah.
are arguing.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you didn't give them a chance. You didn't back off when they gave you a sign to back off. Like, I'll tell you that later. Well, I don't want to know later. I want to know now. You got to give that person a chance. Male, female, whoever, you got to give that person a chance to give you that when they want to give it to you. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to give it to you in the first week. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to give it to
Yeah.
you in the first month. It may be 6 months down the line. Now, critical stuff like, are you married? Do you have any children? What's your real name? I mean, okay, yeah, but I'm just, I'm just saying, maybe something that might have happened in their childhood, or why they act this way or something like that. You got to give people time to open up.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went to another book of poetry. This is Melody inside Lullabies. So Melody inside Lullabies is basically that, self-explanatory, and I did it in the form, the way I wrote the poetry was in a form of abstract and collages. So it's not, a lot of the poetry isn't traditional
Mm-hmm.
poetry. It doesn't have the traditional format. It's it's written in an abstract form. Uh, Whereas though it'll probably be, won't be for everybody's taste,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely poetic renderings. So I wanted to kind of do some artwork that was indicative of the poetry.
Oh, okay.
And my this is my this is to date. This is my work to date, Littered Fields. And this is the one I spoke about earlier, was
Mm-hmm.
the retort to Purple Orchard Syndrome, um, where I interviewed several women on what was their interaction with their father. And you know, if it led to, or more than likely it led to the men that you chose in your life,
Mm-hmm.
in your lives, or partners. I mean, because it was two of the women in the book, without giving out too much, two of the women in the book were um, homosexual. So sometime your interaction with your father, or your early interaction with males, may lead you to the same sex. So uh, in saying that, you definitely, parents play a colossal role, a major role in your upbringing and your output. They're the on the front lines. They're the initial everything. So what you get and what you don't get from a parent is quintessential. So, and that goes back to concepts of intimacy. If you're not the parental type, if you're not, it may even go back to at 12 after, the consummate
Mm-hmm.
bachelor. He knew he wasn't, parental type. So he chose not to have kids. And he
Mm-hmm.
knew that he was not much of a boyfriend or husband. So he chose not to have, a girlfriend. So you kind of got to respect a person for that view, whether it's male or female. It may seem crummy, and you're like, on a larger scale, you're like, what about procreation? What if everyone felt that way? Well, everybody's not going to feel that way. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be
Mm-hmm.
someone out there that's going to want a child. There's going to be nurturing women, and there's going to be responsible men. But I believe in trying to choose somebody that's going to be your forever. God willing, you choose wisely. You don't just
Mhm.
choose for the surface, like, he or she is sexy, or he or she is built very wonderfully, or they have money, or they
Mhm.
have fame, or they're intelligent. Like, you got to go beyond the surface, and you got to go for something that's longevity. A lot of people choose people for short-term reasons. Like, hey, I'm living from pillar to post.
Mhm.
This person has
Mhm.
their own house. I'm gonna get with them. I mean, that might be a short-term
Mhm.
goal, and that
Mhm.
that might help short-term, but it's not long if you don't. It's not good for the longevity if there's nothing in between. If it's not
Mhm.
built on anything. If it's not stable. So, and other than that, I've actually signed an author. Her name, she goes by Lola G, and her book is Pretty Duplicity, and basically it's a young woman, late teens, young woman, trying to maneuver her way through the wilderness of life. So Pretty Duplicity is in stores now. It's online now, Amazon.com. You can get the ebook, or you can go to www.asafalebooks.com, and you can get your own copy as well. So, and that is a good book, because it just, this young woman Lola G telling her story.
Okay. Mhm.
Well, not really her story, but telling, I guess I should say, a story of what some young ladies go through when
Mhm.
they're trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
I mean, when you're, mid-teens, late teens, early 20s, like I said, with I Need You Too, you don't have life figured out. You're kind of just rolling by the seat of your pants.
Mhm.
And you may be getting good advice from both parents, or a parent, or at least some authoritative figure. You may be getting good advice from them, but you're not listening. You're just like, yeah, 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 and then you're just running out there doing your own thing because you know everything.
Mhm.
So you think. So that's that's pretty much that story of a young woman just trying to figure it out, and taking a lot of pitfalls, and losses, uh, and everything, but she's trying to get the bounce back, and she really is trying to figure it out. But there's a lot of there's a lot of uh, holes in the road. There's a lot of twinkling shiny things that we gravitate towards when we're younger. So I'm not going to sit up here and act like I was above it myself, but you just have to try to make it through. You got to try to, as I always say, try to be extreme. You have to be way more positive than negative. That's what I say.
Okay. What is the significance of the purple orchard for you?
um well, I thought it was a story that wasn't told. I thought it was well, actually, stories that weren't told, and I thought that it was a perspective that needed to be looked at. Because they're definitely case studies. Because I'm a product of that myself. I come from a single parent household, and whereas though it was a mother, and she raised me very well. She did as much as she could. She did all that she could to raise uh, a young man, or raise a boy into a man.
Mhm.
So um, it's very significant with me, and it hits home with me because it's personal. And I began writing it because I was thinking on my childhood, and I was like, wow, and the funny thing was, I was like, well, this can't be unique with me.
Mhm.
This can't be unique with me. I can't be the only one that went through this kind of experience. So, in talking to a few of my cronies, I understood that it wasn't unique. Even though when you're going through it, you feel so alone.
Mhm.
You know, I also gathered from their experiences it wasn't anything unique. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, not all cases, thank God, but in most cases, or in a lot of cases, it was commonplace. So I said, well, I need to gather these stories, I need to talk to these gentlemen and see
Mhm.
what their personal experiences were. And so that was the motivation behind Purple Orchard Syndrome.
When did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
Early on, I uh, I began writing actually um, poetry in grade school, and it just progressed through high school and afterwards. And then in junior high, I also penned a comic strip novel. Because, like I said, I always was an artist. I always drew, always painted. I always knew how to draw. So I did a little comic strip, and it was it was kind of simple, just with the bubble and
Mhm,
a few
mhm,
words here and there, a little illustration, but it was fun. And everything I did was motivated to lessen stress. You have a lot of stress factors growing up, whether it's single parent or both parents. You have a lot of stress factors as a kid. Even though I know some parents just think like, oh, you're a kid and you just follow la 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 through life. I mean, there's a lot of stress factors as a child. So that was one of the releases, and writing itself is a release. It was a wonderful release. It was just through doing journals and
mhm,
poetry, it
mhm.
just enabled me to cope with uh, the stresses of life. So I believed early on I wanted to be an author. I knew that was definitely one of the things I was going to strive to be was an author.
Okay. How long does it usually take you to write a book?
Uh, wow, there's no determining factor. I mean, it was one novel that may have taken 3 years, and there was another novel. I think the first novel may have taken about 3 years. The second novel may have taken a year and a half. So it varies, and those are kind of like those are guesstimated numbers,
Mhm,
give or take, a few months here and there. But it can take you as long as I always say it's going to take you as long as it's going to take.
mhm.
When you're independent, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. If you're under contract, it's going to take probably 3 months or whatever, whatever they're going to stress.
What do you do when you're not writing?
um, I listen to a lot of music. I'm not a big TV person unless it's maybe it's a documentary I might like to
Mhm,
look at or
mhm.
History Channel or something like that. But I listen to a lot of music. Um, I go from yesteryear to yesterday with music. I listen to everything. So, but my favorite I would probably have to say is like R&B. I listen to a lot of R&B and oh, I'm sorry. My favorite genre is jazz, old school jazz, and then R&B. So it's like old school jazz and then R&B is like right there.
Okay.
So it would be like Coltrane and then Luther, like right there. So
Okay. What do you think makes a good story?
experience, definitely experience. If you can take a certain element of your experience and fuse that into the story,
Mhm, mhm,
or long as it's nonfiction, even though you may be doing a fictional novel, there has to be some element of truth in it. So it might not be your truth, but it may be someone else's truth. Like you may have spoken to a couple of people and you know that they really went through that. You know that they were on the front lines with that. You know that they were exposed to that. So you're listening and you're being very descriptive. They're being very descriptive and candid. And you take that experience and cultivate that into whatever words you want to. So I definitely think experience and a multitude of nonfiction will make a great fiction novel.
where how are your characters inspired?
Um, Man, again through through the truth, through real life. I mean, like for instance, at 12 after, the story about the three gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
that may have been a story of 50 men. You know, like one character may have represented 30 men,
Okay.
you know. So it's just taking different elements of each guy and putting it into one character, you know. So that's definitely my character development, you know, trying to make things as realistic as possible. And of course, there's a lot of fantasy and things here and there when you're writing, because that's the joy of writing. You know, you've never been to space, but you're writing about space. You know, you don't know what really goes on up there. You know how, you know, they tell you that the air is thin up there or it's no air at all. Like, how do you know? You know, so you can make it as a very comfortable breathing environment. You know, so that, I believe that's the joy of writing. You know, you can make something or nothing into anything.
Mm-hmm. What's your best way of marketing your books?
Um, on social media, of course, but I like to be hands on. I definitely like to meet eventual avid readers at festivals or book signings. So I definitely like the hands on approach, because before I wasn't quote unquote official author or what have you, or before I had any work out, I liked to go to different events and see the authors, or hear listen to the authors speak, and you know, tell of their experiences, uh, what motivated them to write the book, or what motivated them to become a writer. So um, yeah, of course, social media, but I believe you definitely have to keep the festivals alive. So long live the festivals. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely a great thing. Even if you are a ebook person, I think you eventually would like to meet the author.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is your motivation to write?
um, Probably life and legacy. Through this writing, this is kind of like putting work into a vault. This is something that will always be around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a legacy that I believe I'm leaving. This is my voice that will carry on
Mm-hmm.
for eternity. You know, someone will always know. You can just go anywhere and pick up some work of Haikeem Stokes. You know, whether you loved it, whether you hated it, whether you think it's good or bad, it's it's part of history now.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the atmosphere.
What do you enjoy and or hate about the writing process?
Oh man, uh, I love when it's done. Well, actually, I guess I should say it's a love hate thing when it's done,
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, oh man, you know, because even as a writer, you're saying to yourself, I didn't want to end this book, or even if it's a trilogy or if it's an ongoing, so you didn't want to finish that last chapter. You just wanted to keep going on, and and you kind of just kind of relish it, because you're like, you're putting this work out into the atmosphere, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you believe it to be a great work, you believe it to be probably the best thing out there, but you know, folks have their right to have their own opinion. So
Mm-hmm.
folks may folks may chop it down, folks may lift it up, you know. So you definitely have to have um, you definitely have to have uh, strong or a high level of self-esteem, because
Mm-hmm.
folks are going to scrutinize your work. And if you know you put out a strong project, if you know you put out uh, your best, I mean, you just have to let folks shoot at it, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I always tell people, you know, everybody's not going to love it, everybody's not going to hate it either. But it's funny that some people will, more people will love it than hate it, but
Hate
you'll
it.
never know
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Yep.
You'll never know about it,
Mm-hmm.
because especially if the popular things to shoot your work down. They don't want to be the eyeball that says, "Oh no, 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 it's okay. I like it. I like it." They're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, folks are like, not everybody, not everybody at all, but there's a lot of folks that are,
Mm-hmm.
they're bullied. You know, they're into that, that herd mentality. You got to go with what's the popular view. You know, nobody likes to stand out and be independent.
Yes.
So you have to have a strong backbone and just have confidence in your own work.
Okay. What are you working on right now?
Actually, I have two other authors that are coming in to the coming under the Asafale umbrella, and one is doing their work is of an African folk story. Has a
Oh.
lot to do with witches and witch doctors and things that go on in the village where they're from. So it's a very, very interesting story. I can't wait to put it out, but it's going to come out. Uh, I'm trying to be meticulous with it because it's great work, and I want it to be shown as such. So it with everything that has delayed it with, unfortunately, the season that we're in, it may be out the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. And there's also a young lady that's doing a memoir on her husband. Unfortunately, he passed, and she wanted to do a memoir on him to leave his legacy because
Mm-hmm.
he did a lot of great work in the community, and he he went from a nothing to something. He went to somebody that was a menace in the neighborhood to becoming a minister. So that's a great story, and it's a lot of things that's in between. It's a lot of nice, a lot of brilliant nuggets that are in between that she wanted to get out, that she wanted to expose, and I just love that work because it's shining light, a positive light on somebody. It's not tearing somebody down. Or my husband was crummy or blah blah blah. Like she actually misses her husband and she misses the great man that he was. So I also can't wait to get that work out as well. So those are the two that I'm working on. And after I'm done those, I have like I said, I don't stay in one particular genre. So I have a book that'll be coming out. Probably it may be coming out the end of 2020. Uh, I don't have a working title for it yet, but it's actually it's a drama. It's a it's a it's a suspense drama about a serial killer that's going around in Philly just taking folks out, and nobody can figure out who it is or what it is or what's the motive or anything. So it's definitely interesting. I'm taking my time with it as well, and I just want it to be uh, like I said, I like to progress, so I want it to be definitely greater than my prior two novels.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking my time with it. It's actually been on a back burner for approximately 15 months because these other three opportunities came in the mix. So I didn't want to do it in between and not give it its proper attention. So, and that's the other thing with the artists, the authors that I'm dealing with. I want to give them all proper attention. So I can't try to do my work. I'd rather put my work on the back burner than put their work on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is definitely true. So if you want to sign with Asafale Books, if you want to sign with Asafale Books, I will put you on the forefront, and I won't put your work on the show. So,
Thank you. Where can readers find you?
you could definitely find me on Facebook under Haikeem Stokes. There's no author on it. It's just Haikeem Stokes. All my work is there also, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram under is it at Asophile Books, and the spelling is ASOPHILABOOKS. ASOPHILABOOKS.
Okay. What does that mean?
Asophile, the Asophile, if you can see it right there.
Up. Bring
Asophile,
it up. Bring it up.
low, up,
Up.
up, okay.
Up. Up.
I just
Come
want
on.
you to see Asophile.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Asophile is the hardest substance known to man, is the definition of it.
Okay.
And when I read that definition, I was like, wow. So that can mean a great many things,
Thanks.
you know. So I just uh take it as complexity, you know. Because as a person, you should never stop uh growing, you know, your mind. You should never stop growing your mind. You
Yes.
know, you're never going to be the smartest. Like, okay, if you just stop at high school level, or, you know, once you get out of college, or, you know, middle age, like, no, you continue learning. You should learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my challenge. Like I said earlier, that's my I challenge myself to learn something new every day, and hopefully it'll be something of brilliance.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
Oh, definitely. Like I said in my opening, I definitely want to let everyone know that my heart goes out to everyone that's dealing with this unfortunate season, and I definitely want to
Mhm.
beg everyone to just stay prayed up,
Mm,
and
yes.
just keep your belief in the Creator. And just on a lighter note, you know, all this is irrelevant when it comes to life, but hopefully this interview would just be uh, um, just something to get your mind off of the critical situation that's going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, if you didn't get anything else from this interview, I hope that you got the message to just better yourself. Just continue to better yourself, positive, and continue to make positive strides in life. Don't let anything stop you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this, you can't do that, because of whatever race, creed, color,
Mm-hmm.
religion, you know, height, gender, whatever. You know, if you want to do it and it's a positive thing, try it. If it's a negative thing and they tell you shouldn't do it, then yeah, listen to them. But if it's something positive, if it's something that's going to be rewarding, especially if it's going to affect humanity positively, definitely uh, try it. You know, even if you quote unquote don't have the education for it, you know, try it. You know, research, and that's what everybody should do before they write a book. You know, any author, you should
Mm-hmm.
research your work. So that should be something that's quintessential to you. So, you know, if you don't know it, research it. Everything, you know, I love libraries. I love libraries. Libraries are, I mean, they're heaven sent. You know, anything that you want to know, anything that you need to learn, go to a library. If you didn't attend college, go to a library. You want any kind of information, go to a library. Or the lazy library, go to the internet. But, you know, try to go to the library, spend some
Mm-hmm.
time in the library. As a child, I spent a lot of time in the
I
library.
did too.
I spent a lot. My mother took us to the library a lot, you know. So
How many
um,
times did y'all go a month?
a month as a child,
Yeah.
we
How many
went
times did your mom take you?
as a man, as a child, we went every Saturday after we cleaned the house.
That's how we did.
So
We went every other Saturday after we cleaned the house.
right, right. So you know, and then maybe once or twice a month on Saturday after we left the library, we would go somewhere like, you know, a museum,
Yep.
live,
Yep.
you know, Natural Academy of Natural Science, Franklin Institute. You know, we went on some kind of mission. You know, she'd take us to the Clark's Park and we learned something, or we went to Fairmount Park and we learned something, or you know, we had just learned something. You know, she always was on a mission for information or education.
Mhm.
That was her thing. That was her infinite gift to us. You know, information and education. So I definitely thank her for that.
All right. Thank you, Hakeem, for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for blessing me to be present on this wonderful forum, this wonderful platform that you have, and much continued success to you.
Thank you so much. And with that being said, and all minds are clear, happy reading. Bye, y'all.